confusion.
So you said the COP2.
It's complicated.
The COP2 proteins have a gap of activity?
Correct.
Unless they're found like that.
Okay, so where does the gap activity come from?
Yeah.
The gap activity comes once these are in a vesicle. There are so many COP2 proteins that they act as gap. And for this has been found, but it's a little, in most cases there's a separate gap protein. This one's a little bit different, and the gap activity wasn't known for a long time. So we're going to sort of breeze over what the gap is in this reaction. But what I do want you to know is where is the GEF, because the GEF on the SAR1 membrane is what controls COP2 vesicles forming on the ER. And those will form, and they'll form because it'll make the amphipathic helix of SAR1 flip out here, and when that flips out, it will bind to the nearest membrane. So it will bind on the ER membrane, and that's why COP2 vesicles form only on the ER membrane, because the GEF is only on the ER membrane. And the SAR1, it would go to any membrane that it was close to with that hydrophobic tail. It's hydrophobic, it doesn't like water, it's just boom, insert into a bilayer. And it does that because this is right here. It'll ignore mitochondria, nuclear membranes, cis-Golgi membranes, plasma membranes, and it's because the GEF is right here. Sort of cool how that works. So that's what I want you to remember, is SAR1 GDP is soluble, and it's soluble because the amphipathic helix is hidden. SAR1 GTP will bind to the closest membrane because the amphipathic helix flips out. It'll bind, that membrane will always be the ER membrane because that's where the SAR1 gap is. And then what reaction is SAR1 controlling? The formation of COP2 coated vesicles. And it'll do that as long as it's in its GTP bound form. Once it goes to its GDP bound form, that coat will fall off. Question?
So how does the SAR, or like the coat protein, actually know when to bud off?
Okay, good question. Yeah. So these coat proteins go and go and go. How do they know when to bud off? So in some cases, there's an accessory protein that will help that final pinch. That's been known for clathrin-coated vesicles. It's not really known for COP2-coated vesicles, and it's thought that what's known is that formation will cause the membrane to bend, and it could be that the bilayers get so close together that it becomes energetically favorable to pinch off like that. Good question. Other questions? So let's go to, okay, so I am talking about SAR1 being involved in COP2-coated vesicles. The same principle holds true for other steps. So the small GTPase that's involved in cis-Golgi to ER traffic is called ARF1. And there's also another variant of ARF1 that's involved in clathrin plus AP1. So the small G protein right here is one kind of ARF. And then we have for COP1 coated vesicles another kind of ARF. And the principle is the same. When it's in its GTP bound form, it'll promote coat assembly. The GEF for this kind of ARF is on the cis-Golgi network. For this kind of ARF, which is a different isoform, it is on the trans-Golgi network, and it'll promote that assembly. The clathrin plus AP2 coats are a little bit different. The small G protein has not been isolated, so maybe that works a little bit differently, or maybe it just hasn't been found yet. Okay, so everything I told you about SAR1 can be used in analogy for how the ARF proteins work and how this would work if a small G is found. Okay, so let's now go to an Instapoll question right here. You have a mutant cell. This is an actual experiment that's done in yeast cells. You can have a mutant cell. Now SAR1 is essential for life because cells will die if you block all traffic from the ER to the cis-Golgi network. The secretory pathway is essential for life. And so the way you do these kind of mutants is you have a permissive temperature and a restrictive temperature. Perhaps you encountered this principle in genetics, depending on whose genetic course you took. So at the permissive temperature, so the same protein has a point mutation, and at the permissive temperature, cells will live. But at the restrictive temperature, which is usually found by shifting up some degrees, you shift to a higher temperature. And at the restrictive temperature, the mutant SAR1, cells will die, and because the mutant form has a different activity. So at the permissive temperature, SAR1, this mutant form of SAR1 acts like wild type SAR1. At the restrictive temperature, it acts as it expresses the mutant phenotype. And cells would die, but you have an opportunity to look at what happens with this mutant at the restrictive temperature. Does that make sense? Restrictive temperatures and permissive temperatures? Okay, so at the permissive temperature, SAR1 is wild type, but at the restrictive temperature, SAR1 cannot hydrolyze GTP. So it's a mutant form that cannot hydrolyze GTP. So you grow the cells at the permissive temperature, so they're wild type, they're growing pretty okay. And then you shift up to the restrictive temperature, and suddenly SAR1 cannot hydrolyze GTP. And then you can look at the phenotype of the cells and look what's going on. So what would be the phenotype of these cells at the restrictive temperature, where SAR1 cannot hydrolyze GTP? Which of these phenotypes would you see? We saw a convergence on the, from half and half to mostly the correct answer. And that's why it's important, again, to find someone with an answer different, because if half of you are choosing the wrong answer, odds are the person next to you might also have. So, and then in reasoning, you usually figure out the right answer. So no one picked A or B, the COP1 coded vesicles, because I think what you were remembering is that SAR1, that these are specific. So SAR1 works on ER to cis Golgi proteins, whereas it is the ARF proteins that work on, one kind of ARF working on COP1 coded vesicles, and another kind of ARF working on platinum plus AP1 vesicles, so that it's very specific. So we knew to focus on COP2 codes right here. So we could reject, if the question were something about COP1 coded vesicles, we could switch this to ARF, right? And analyze the increase or decrease in vesicles. But it's COP2 because it's SAR1. And so so the answer sort of converged on C and D. So initially people thought C, but we saw a convergence onto D, an increase in the number of COP2 coded vesicles. And in fact, this experiment was really done in yeast cells, and it's exactly how it was realized what the GTPase is controlling with this kind of experiment, by making a SAR1 that could not hydrolyze GTP, so it's always in its GTPase activity. So can someone who switched their answer from C, maybe initially thinking a decrease in COP2 coded vesicles, but realized the answer was D, that the phenotype would be an increase in the COP2 coded vesicles? Can someone volunteer what they were thinking in choosing D? Go ahead.
They can't hydrolyze GTP, then it's gonna always be like in the active state.
Right, it's always gonna be in the active state. Perfect thinking. And then it's always gonna be forming coat formation. So if you look at those cells, they're going to have tons of COP2 coated vesicles in the cell. And that's what the EM showed. You just did the EM, and it is, the cytoplasm was jam-packed full of COP2 coated vesicles. But the cells would die, because that's why you have to do this permissive restrictive temperature, because you eventually would run out of endoplasmic reticulum and you wouldn't get anywhere further. You wouldn't be able to secrete proteins, and secretion is essential for life. Great answer. Questions? Okay, so what are we covering next? We have talked about how vesicles bud off from the membrane. We've covered how the coats form. For that, we use the story of clathrin, looking at how those monomers are in the cytoplasm and they form on a particular membrane. Same is true with COP1 and COP2, those are from the cytoplasm. We covered how the coats form where they're supposed to form, and for that, we covered COP2, but the story is that just as the monomeric coats are the same, story for all of them, the small g's are the same for all of them, maybe not the plasma membrane guys, but small g's control all of these steps. Now we're going to look at vesicle fusion. So we've budded off a vesicle from the appropriate membrane, from the endoplasmic reticulum. The coat immediately falls off because the SAR1 or ARF go to its GDB bound form. It's no longer promoting assembly, so those coat proteins fall off and are recycled back. Then how does that vesicle, so let's look at the COP2 vesicle, how does that fuse with the cis Golgi network and not with any other compartment? How does the clathrin-coated vesicle coming from the plasma membrane fuse to make endosomes and not with other compartments? You know that the story can't be found in the coat proteins or in these small g's because those have dissociated away from the vesicle. So what's left? What could be controlling the fusion of the vesicle with the next compartment? And that's what we're going to look at now. And that story is told